We're listening to a brand new episode of the Whole Story Podcast. On today's episode, senior ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter. Adam, how are you doing? Thanks again for taking the time to come on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Alex.
So, if this is just such an unprecedented time in the country and world's history, if you would to put your finger on the pulse of how everyone in the NFL are feeling right now on the hope of a 2020 season, what would you say?
I think that we all want there to be football. Mm-hmm. We're all anxious for there to be football. But I don't know that anybody can say for sure how and when there's going to be football. Mm-hmm. And it's just reflective of the times that we're living in. When's the next time that you're going to get to go to the movies? When's the next time you're going to get to go to a Broadway play? When's the next time you're going to go out to dinner? Mm-hmm. So it's not just the football industry, but it's every industry. Mm-hmm. And nobody has any answers to these questions right now, especially living on the East Coast. I think Arizona announced that it's opening up later this month. And so different parts of our country are viewing this in a different way, I believe. Mm-hmm. But here on the East Coast, I believe you're on the East Coast, right, Alex?
Yes, I'm in upstate New York.
Yeah, and I'm in downstate New York. And so it's just different here. Yeah. It's just different. Mm-hmm. And unless you're in New York or New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, somewhere here on the eastern seaboard, close to the heart of it, the epicenter of it, it's hard to fully grasp how real it is. But here it's very real. And so people in other parts of the country may not grasp that, but it's impossible to answer some of these things because we don't. I'd love to tell you, oh boy, we're kicking off September 10th, can't wait to see the games, and I hope that that is the case. And we'll continue to be optimistic that that will be the case, but I don't know that that will be the case.
Look, everyone has so many questions, but there are no answers to any of them. That's basically, what everyone is saying right now, and it's definitely a frustrating time and a scary time because it's not like we can look back and say, well, 10 years ago this happened, because this is the first time we've ever dealt with anything like this. But this podcast is really centered around a break from what's happening in the outside world and hopefully a breakaway for that. It's really centered about your career, and I interviewed you back in July of last year, and we kind of talked a little about your career path, but I want to dive more in, and we talked about your time there was a newspaper war when you first started the newspaper, but I want to go a little before that, where you had to go to grad school because you couldn't find a job. And at that moment where you couldn't find a job for 2 years, what made you decide, all right, I'm going to go to grad school. I still want to do something in sports, whether it was on the sports management side, whether it be in front office, or on the, you want to become a newspaper writer. So where did you figure out in your mind, okay, wait a second, I'm going to give it one more shot, go to grad school in hopes to find a job in the sports industry?
Well, that really, at that point in time, I felt like was my last option. It was the best and real only option I had at that particular point in time. If I had I told this to people at the time, if there had been a newspaper, any newspaper, you name the newspaper, any part of the country that had offered me a job back in 1989, 1990, I would have taken it anywhere. But I literally could not get a single offer, not one. And when I couldn't get an offer, I had no choice but to think of other options and alternatives, and the one that seemed obvious to me at that point in time was going to graduate school in Chicago, working on the side for the Chicago Tribune as what you call a stringer at that time, and doing all the assignments that nobody else would want to do. And so that's what I did, because it was the best of my options, but it was not the option that I was hoping to get. Like I said, if a newspaper in Wyoming or Nebraska or Louisiana or wherever it was offered me a job doing anything, I would have done that ahead of graduate school. I could not get a job, and it was not for lack of effort. I sent out resumes and clippings to hundreds of newspapers everywhere. Like every newspaper got it from me. Mm-hmm. So, I can say, Alex, I've been rejected by every newspaper in the country practically at that time.
How important was, at this time, were you sending letters to writers asking for advice during this time as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that went on all through college and into graduate school and early in my career. The people whose work that I respected and appreciated and admired, I would send letters to asking for career counsel and advice and wisdom, and many of them were kind enough to get back to me, and some of them weren't. And it's why I've tried to get back to people. I don't like to do it in a social media form because I've sometimes I don't read a lot of the stuff that people send there, but every now and then I do, and I notice that it's the same question. What advice would you have about going into sports? And I feel like I've tried to give an inordinate number of these talks, speeches, whatever you want to call them, podcasts for young adults to listen to. And they're on YouTube, by the way. Like, you can just Google, Adam Schefter speaks at Northwestern, or I've done conferences, and I've done this so many times, and I can't answer it in a little text to people that send me that question, as much as I appreciate it and would like to. I can't do it. It's not going to fit. It's not going to work. It's not the forum to do it. And so when you have a little time to let it breathe and to explain some of the comments and answer questions, this is a place that I hope some young people will tune in, listen, because I know I sought out enough advice from enough people when I was in your position or a similar position.
Let's go back to the basics of it. You wanted to be a newspaper writer and now a TV analyst. Did you ever think you would be in the position you are? And how much was your writing skills that you learned help you become a successful TV analyst?
Well, I don't know who declared me successful, but thank you for that. I appreciate that. I would say that I never envisioned myself in the position I'm in. It's not what I set out to do. I'm grateful and honored and appreciative beyond words that I have the job that I do. I feel very lucky and privileged and honored to work for such a great company, ESPN, Walt Disney. They've been tremendous and love working for them. The writing element is, I think, critical. And so when people do ask for advice, there's a lot of things I would say, but one of them at the very top, which is what everybody told me, everybody to a man that answered me, was read 30 minutes a day, read books, read magazines, read newspaper, read whatever it is that you read 30 minutes and write. And as a newspaper writer for almost 16 years, I wrote every single day for 16 years. And I think what that did was it enabled me to think of being word efficient, being succinct, not wasting words, not dilly-dallying before you get to the point. So the newspaper became a training ground for how to talk on TV without me even knowing that I was doing that. And I think writing is critical for anybody. And that's why when I would say, when people go to college and they go, what kind of major should I be? A journalism major? No. Go do that on your own. Go work for the student newspaper or radio station or TV station or whatever it is that you like and want to try. Go try all of them, frankly. But go be an English major so that you can read and write as much as you can, because those are the most important skills that anybody in any line of work can have. I think anybody needs to be able to do that. Anybody. You write cards on Mother's Day. You write birthday cards. You write love notes to your spouse. You write letters to friends. You send emails every day. Writing and reading are critical, and that's something that I would urge everybody to really focus in on no matter what they want to do.
The last time I interviewed you, one thing that stuck out to me most was that you write in your journal every single day. And ever after that, I've kept my journal going. And even if it's just writing to yourself, you learn from just writing every single day. And
I still do that, and I'm glad you do that, Alex. That's good. And it's another thing that I'd recommend. It's a good way to practice writing, to kind of keep a running document of your life. And you're young to do it, so I didn't start doing it till about 1990. But you could ask me for any day in my journal. You could say March 6, 1994. We could go to it, and I could tell you what I did that day, everything about that day. And every day is documented since 1990. So I've documented the last 30 years of my life in a journal.
Adam, how do you combat the 4-letter phrase FOMO, fear of missing out?
In terms of what, life, professional work, story? What do you mean by that, Alex?
I think it kind of goes into all of that because, it's a balance, right, from what you do with ESPN, because what's interesting now is everyone's working from home, but for the good part of the last few years,
Yep.
you've always been working from home. So if
Yeah.
anyone should ask for advice, it should be you, because you've kind of done that the last few years, but still it's kind of your information person with ESPN. That's your main job, providing information to the public, but also at home, you're a husband, a father. So how
Yep.
can you kind of balance the fear of missing out? Because, it's the same idea. Well, if I spend 5 minutes doing one thing, there's 5 minutes I can't be spending on doing something else. So how do you kind of go through that mindset of just the fear of missing out on something?
Well, what I would say to that is that takes on different forms. And so FOMO, which I had never heard until you just said that, to be perfectly frank.
Oh, wow.
Maybe I'm hopelessly unhip and out of touch, but FOMO, as it pertains to work, I think that's kind of what helps fuel you every day. You don't want to get beat on any story. You don't want to miss out on any story, right? So you're checking on things and digging into things and trying to figure out things because you don't want to miss out on anything that's notable or significant in the NFL. So professionally speaking, that helps motivate you every day. Personally speaking, it takes on an entirely different meaning. I don't know that I don't think it's fear of missing out as much as just concern of missing out and just I don't know, you're conscious. Like, I mean, you want to be there for your family and you want to do those things. And I've been home since March 11th. I haven't left here, and I don't know the next time I will be leaving here. And so it's a rare and unusual time. As you mentioned, I've always done a lot of work from home. And I try to do that not for fear of missing out, but just not wanting to miss out. And so I'll continue to do that. You want to be as present as you can for your family. You want to be there as much as you can. Inevitably, you get pulled away by work at certain times, certain moments, for certain stories. It just happens. Last night during dinner, phone rings. Literally, we just sat down and phone rang. Just pulled back, I've been waiting for a little while. Finally, somebody called, and okay, I guess figures. And so I stepped away. I mean, so did I miss out on dinner? I did. Did I fear that? No, that just comes along with the territory.
By the way, the actual definition of FOMO is anxiety that an exciting or interesting event may currently be happening somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't have FOMO. I don't worry about missing out on somewhere else. I mean, it's fine.
Now, exactly, kind of, your number one job is providing information. How can you also not let yourself get burnt out? Because if you go back to the beginning of your career, you were a writer, but you can't really do that too much because your number one job right now is providing information. So how can you kind of do different things under your same umbrella, kind of different families, kind of element to your own job, so you don't get burned out doing just one thing every single day?
It's interesting because back when I covered the NFL and the Broncos for almost 16 years for newspapers in Denver, people would ask me that then, and they would say, are you afraid of getting burnt out? And it's not that you're afraid of getting burnt out, but you do anything long enough, you've got to challenge yourself, find different ways to challenge yourself. Like, how does Bill Belichick do it all these years? How does Mike Tomlin do it all these years? How does Pete Carroll? Because, first of all, there's professional pride. There's a passion. So there's pride, there's passion, and it's just what they love to do. And I love to do what I do. Now, are there things about it that, day to day, does it get long in season? Yes. Do you like to travel? Well, I would love to travel now, but, does that wear you out? Yes, in season, when you're on your 17th straight week of flying somewhere and taking a red-eye home. And, that wears you down and tires you out and burns you out, if you will. But then you take a little bit of time, like now we're in the month of May, and I intentionally have a slower work schedule. I'm checking on things, I'm making some calls, but I'm not digging in because I try to take, let's just say, it's usually like Memorial Day through July 4th. That's kind of a quiet period where you get to recharge the battery. And I think you have to be smart about recharging the battery at certain points, knowing that you can go on. And I've tried to do that always. And I did, like I said, almost 16 years in newspapers. I've done almost 16 years now in television. So it's been an almost even match. And, like I said, how do I not burn out? I would say, number one, I care about what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I try to get some rest when I can to be better at what I can do.
How do you challenge yourself every single day?
I don't. I just think that it's in you. You know, again, if you care and there's a pride and you're passionate about it, it's the same kind of answer, to be perfectly frank with you, Alex. The same reason that you don't burn out. I don't wake up in the morning and go, okay, let's go get him today. You know, none of that. Again, I just care about my job, and I care about doing it the right way. And so you wake up, and that's what drives you, about being a pro. And that's what trying to be a pro is, caring about your job and challenging yourself every day and basically doing what you're supposed to do. And that's what I try to do every day. I don't try to do anything more than that.
What's the best compliment someone's ever given you?
You know, it's funny. Somebody just recently texted me something. I'm trying to think what it was because I remember saying, wow, that was really, really nice. But I don't remember what it is. But I remember being like struck by it, like, wow, that was exceptionally nice. It would be in my journal somewhere. I'd have to go and look at it. But honestly, you know, with everything going on, I really don't remember. I'd have no problem sharing it. But I remember getting this text saying, being, wow, that was really nice. I just don't remember what it was.
Yeah. No, because it kind of just brought me back because if you feel like, my number one thing is I want to be a pro with whatever you're doing, when someone gives you that sort of compliment, that has to stick with you, and it kind of, it's almost like if you put in all the effort and you're not getting anything back, but when you do get something back, it excites you even more to just continue to strive to be the best person you can, whether it's in the industry, in your career, or just in life in general.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what that was. It was really a text, like it was something unexpected. And I think those are the things, like when you hear from somebody that you wouldn't ordinarily expect, who says something that you wouldn't ordinarily expect, and that kind of stays with you. I remember being at the Pro Bowl this year. I was with my daughter, and my parents were there. And we ran into somebody in the industry. I'll just say that. I don't need to name the person. And the person kind of went out of his way. And yes, he was a bit effusive and excessive. But, he went to my parents and said, I just want to let you know what a pro your son is and how much integrity he has. And it was very nice to hear somebody say that to my parents, not to me. Because I think that it was some validation for all the hard work that they put in over time.
When you're trying to build relationships, and that's what, in any industry, but especially in the sports industry, that's key. When you're asking people these questions, how can you know when you can ask the tough questions? How can you kind of gauge, all right, I feel confident, I have a good relationship with this person, where I can kind of ask this tough question to them and feel they're going to give me a response that I feel confident in?
Well, listen, again, my job is to gather information and report on air, so I'm not doing very many interviews on air, but if you were to listen to my podcast, the Adam Schefter podcast, you're interviewing people there every week. And so I guess your question would apply to that, the Adam Schefter podcast, more than it would anything else that I do, right? So I think that there's an understanding that you have to ask tough questions, but I think that they have to be fair. And as long as you're fair about it, then I think you have the right to pursue that avenue. Now, I'm trying to give you an example. Each week I've been speaking with the medical director of the NFL Players Association, Dr. Tom Mayer, who's been gracious enough to give us a time during this pandemic and perspective. And so I guess there are some tough questions, like, are we going to have football? Where are we on that, Dr. Mayer? And he can answer however he wants. But he knows that when he comes on, he's fair game, and he's been, like I said, very gracious about that. And, there's nothing that I want to ask that I don't ask. So, again, but you just have to do it in a fair way. If I said to him, are we going to have football? And he said, well, we're going to try, and we're going to keep our hopes up, and we're going to do everything we can if the players are sick. And I came back and said, so is that a yes or a no? And, well, I don't know. well, you got to give me, like, if I was unfair about it, that wouldn't be right. Mm-hmm. But I think as long as you're asking fair questions that are tough, I think that's perfectly within bounds.
Adam, this is my favorite part of the show. It's a fast 5 quick round. It's 5 quick questions, and if you want to expand on them at all, you certainly can. Are you ready?
Sure.
What's one thing people think you are, but you are not?
One thing that they think I am that I'm not. Well, they think I'm real short, and I'm not exactly the tallest guy in the world, but I'm not that short either. So, I think we shrink as we get older. I know people that's been the case too, but when I was in college and I think I was 5'8" or whatever it was, and maybe I'm 5'7.5" now, which isn't the tallest, but it's not something that I think merits the kind of attention that it sometimes attracts on social media.
One person that said the opposite of that was tall was Mike Reese. He said people think that he's tall, but he's not.
Yeah, well, I mean, but Mike, who cares? Like, what does it matter? I don't get it. Like, you put, just the comments that the mean-spiritedness of some comments is really, again, I guess it's a part of our world, but it's a part of our world that I don't agree with, don't really appreciate, don't like, don't think it's right, and, would hope that people would be better than that.
My next one kind of goes into that biggest pet peeve. Are Twitter comments one of your biggest pet peeves?
Listen, they are what they are. I'm not going to change it. Mm-hmm. So it's not really a pet peeve of mine. Pet peeves of mine, there are certain words that I don't like. I don't like the word reportedly. I don't like if ESPN uses the word reportedly, because reportedly means it's been reported somewhere. Well, who's reporting it? Mm-hmm. And do they deserve credit? And we, I've even had that with our stories, where I've heard somebody say, Tom Brady's reportedly signing with the Bucs. Well, who reported it? When did they report it? Like, what is that reportedly? Like, tell me what that means. There's no sense for. There's no reason for that word. That word is a peeve. Reportedly, don't like it.
The next one is Stidham going to be the starting quarterback of the Patriots or someone else?
Well, right now it looks like it's going to be Jarrett Stidham. Unless he flounders in training camp. I think the best way of saying it is that they go into training camp and it's his job to lose. It's his job to lose. Now, I can't tell you how he's going to play this summer, assuming there is training camp, hoping that there is training camp. But if there is training camp and he plays well, yeah, I think he's going to be the starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know a lot of people have your Twitter notifications on. Do you have anyone that you have tweet notifications on?
I have Mort. I have my boss. I have Field Yates. So those are the updates that I try to keep on.
And then the last one for the Fast Five, if you could interview one person off the record, who would you choose?
Well, that's the great part of my job, Alex, is that if there's somebody that I wanted to interview, usually you can. And so, not even interview, but just speak with in the field of football. So if we're going to go outside of that, there's nobody that I look at and go, boy, I'd like to interview that person. I mean, just not how I think. And people that I am curious about speaking with, I try to reach out and get for my podcast. So a lot of the people I have spoken with, or, there are certain people that just shine in certain ways and want to get them on and try to get them on the podcast. Mm-hmm. So, again, I don't think like that, but I understand why you would ask.
Mm-hmm. Adam, my last question for you. Once said the best thing that something basically happened to you was getting the word no. What's kind of been the biggest thing for you is learning how to accept the word no and make the best out of it in your career?
Well, I just think that that's critical for every person who is starting out in any industry, right? Like, how many people just come into an industry at the age of 21, 22, 23, whatever it may be, and take it by storm? I mean, athletes rarely even do that. And so there's a learning curve. I know when I was that age, I thought, well, I should be a sports newspaper columnist. Like, I care enough, work hard enough, know enough, or so I thought at that time, that there's no reason that I shouldn't be able to do this. And then, you look back when you're older and you say, boy, I really would not have been ready to do that as much as I was convinced I was. And so people will tell you no when you want to be a newspaper columnist when you're younger, or when you want to cover a different beat than the one you're assigned to. And people will tell you no when you're applying to jobs. And again, I just think it's up to each individual to take all the no's and to go find the yeses, and understand that no's mean that one door is closed, but there's another that's going to open. And no's just present another opportunity for you to go seek out something that's going to be even better than the opportunity that you were rejected from. So what I've learned over time through enough rejection of my own, and there's been plenty, is that shouldn't deter you. That shouldn't stop you. Yes, it's okay to be frustrated and beaten down, and your self-esteem does take a pounding as you're trying to get established in the working world, and I would think it would take a pounding in today's day and age trying to get established in the working world, where we're living in this world of uncertainty and a pandemic. So, again, you just got to keep digging in and grinding it out, and know that you're going to get a lot of no. And it's up to you to take the no's and make the best of them.
Well, Adam, thanks again for taking the time to come on the Whole Story podcast today. Where can everyone listen to your podcast, as well as follow you on all social media?
Well, I appreciate you asking. I think my podcast, Alex, I don't even know these things, but I think it's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, the Adam Schefter podcast, so it's there. Social media, my name's Adam Schefter, so hopefully you follow along. And if you do, great. If you don't, no problem.